And Keira Woods' daughter mysteriously vanishes into the cellar of their new house. Keira soon discovers there is an ancient and powerful entity controlling their home that she will have to face or risk losing her family's souls forever. It is the brand new film, The Cellar, starring Elisha, Cuthbert, and Eoin Macken, which premiered at this year's South by Southwest Festival and is in theaters and on Shudder April 15th. Welcome, everybody, to the Scare Guy Show, the official production of thescareguy.com, where we as filmmakers and movie fans discuss horror films, haunt events, spooky news, and anything that's scary fun. My name is Jim Fry, your horror host for today's show. I am a writer and the editor-in-chief of The Scare Guy, and also our brother site, The Con Guy. And my co-horror host today for the show is...
Cheeseman here, screenwriter and one of the founding members of thescareguy.com.
Yep. And our very special guest for this episode is the writer and director of The Cellar, Brendan Muldowney. His list of films include, among others, Love Eternal, Savage, Pilgrimage. Brendan, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So can I ask you, where is it that you're coming to us from today?
Dublin, Ireland.
Oh, my God.
At 25 to 9 at night.
Oh wow, it's 12:30 for us here.
Yeah.
I must say, just a couple of years ago, I was in Dublin. Cheeseman was with me. What a beautiful area. We stayed over at the Temple Bar, and then I went on a literary tour of all the pubs of Dublin. Then we went across Ireland to the cliffs. You know, all the touristy stuff, the cliffs of Moher, and man, what a beautiful time. Yeah. So is this where you? This is your home base? Then is in Dublin.
Yeah, I grew up here in Dublin, yeah. So
Nice.
I don't live in Temple Bar, mind you. It's not.
You get no work done there.
No, that's not conducive for family life. I live on the suburbs with my family.
Very good, very good.
That's awesome.
Cheeseman.
Now, there's something we kind of like to ask, like right from the beginning of the show, whenever we do the Scare Guy shows. I'm sure because this being kind of like a horror film, like there were some origins of that for you. Like, where did the love of horror all start for you?
You know, growing up in the 70s in Ireland, we had maybe 2 channels on TV, and one was RTE, the state broadcaster, and the other might have been through a satellite or an air. It wasn't satellites at the time. It was an aerial that might have reached across the sea, and I can't remember. I just know we had very little options. And on a Saturday night, the popular thing to do was late now on a Saturday night. The popular thing was to put on a Hammer movie, a Hammer horror. And, you know, we weren't allowed to watch them, but we'd have babysitters, and myself and my brother would sneak in and peek through the door or hide over the sofa and watch them. But, you know, and then I would say as well, they had a TV series then. Which wasn't the films, it was a TV series. I've actually bought the box set since because it had such a profound effect on us, on me and my brother. We watched, there was one episode, and the babysitter, who was my cousin at the time, did let us watch it. And it was called The Two Faces of Evil. It was a doppelganger sort of story, which, you know, and I hadn't seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers or any of these to be exposed to it. So it was my first time witnessing this doppelganger thing where someone close to you who you love is actually evil, and it was pretty well done. There was like 2 really memorable scares in this this particular TV episode, and it terrified us. And I remember for months afterwards, we weren't sleeping, and we were knocking on the parents' door and stuff. But in a weird way, I think that awakened something. You know, it's like the way I enjoy a hot curry. You know, I knew it scared me, but wow, you know, it was doing something that that I wasn't feeling, you know, otherwise. So I have a feeling that's where it started. I mean, then and over the years, I've always been a fan of horror. From, you know, I was a big fan of the French New Wave Extreme. I'm a big fan of them. But on the same time, I could go to the DVD shop on the way home on a Friday night, and I just wanted to switch off the brain, and I'd get something like Cherry Falls, which was, I think, was after Scream, and it was like, the rules are if you're a virgin, you'll die. So let's all have a big party and lose our virginity. I mean, it's nonsense, but it's sort of really cool, fun nonsense. So I love all ends of the spectrum of it. Having said that, and I'm sorry for waffling so much, but I do remember when I first thought, maybe filmmaking might be an option here. There was a TV series, again, called Movie Drone. Alex Cox, the film director, used to introduce cult movies, and they were all very interesting movies. But he introduced The Wicker Man one night, and I sat and watched The Wicker Man, and something changed that night.
Well, yeah, The Wicker Man's it's a very troubling film. It just leaves you with a sense of dread towards the end of that film. And I agree, that's a film that will affect anybody. Speaking of films, like if you had to say, what is one of your favorite horror films?
It's very hard to do that, but again,
Give us some of your favorites, maybe.
Some of my favorite horror films. Again, the Wicker Man, I have to put in there. Rosemary's Baby, I really love. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I really love.
73.
I don't know if you'd call Psycho a horror film, but I do. I think that's fantastic as well. I've been asked this so much recently that I have a list, but not just of horror films. I mean, because to me, what I really find interesting about horror is that there's a sort of part of it where there's a section that there's no supernatural. There's the horror is in man. There's a filmmaker I really love called Simon Rumley. He made a film called Red, White, and Blue, and it's fantastic. A film, I think. Anyway, what else do I have in here? I've got Rosemary's Baby, The Wicker Man. I'm skipping over other stuff in here, like I've got the Breakfast Club and Taxi Driver and all the classics, and there's some art house. Yeah. There's some art house stuff in here. There's a couple of Bergman films that I think are pretty good horror films: Persona, Through a Glass Darkly, and Hour of the Wolf. I loved the original, The Vanishing. It's called Spurloos. It was a Dutch film. Yeah. Very, very haunting film. I see here a couple of Gaspar Noé films, and I sort of put them in there as horror. Like, they're very horrific anyway. Don't Look Now, fantastic movie. Oh God, I've forgotten the actor's name. Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
I also like Kill List. Have you seen Ben Wheatley's Kill List?
I've heard of that one, but I have not seen that one.
Oh, you got to see it. You got to search that one out. And then, is there anything left here? I see Martyrs is in there. And I love Cronenberg. I love J horror as well. I loved Ringo. I mean, there's so much I could go on. But
yeah. Well, those films that you are describing, definitely they kind of have a similarity in the way they're produced, the way that you think about them. They're very, very bloody, very, very, very horrifying, but it's not schlocky. Like, those aren't the schlock films of the 80s that you're talking about, even the early 90s, and let's bring this back to The Cellar. Tell us about how the idea of The Cellar was birthed. Where did that idea come from?
It came from a short film. I made a short film in 2004 called The 10 Steps. It's on YouTube. It was a very successful short film for our company. It won Best Short in 2005 at the Sitges Fantastic Film Festival, which is a hardcore horror audience. Right. And it did the whole circuit of the genre circuit in Europe, won loads of awards, but at the same time was winning children's film festivals. It won Best Short at the New York International Children's Film Festival, which was running at the time. It's not anymore. But, so where did it come from? We saw that there was something special about this. It was hitting a broad range. Like, how are the horror nuts loving this and the children's film festivals? And over the years as well, on different platforms, I've seen a lot of commentary of what happens next, about the short. So in a way, the short itself was influenced by Robert Wise's The Haunting. So that was a film, and maybe The Innocents you could throw in there as well, but not as much. But The Haunting, I just at the time wanted to make a film that had it was all about atmosphere, had no gore.
Yeah.
And
no, go ahead.
Well, no, and you know, so when I was making that, it was all about atmosphere, and so even films like the original Final Destination was creeping in there because
Oh yeah.
you know, it was about like atmosphere and a presence of evil presence creeping around rooms. So you know, it was really all came from the short film, which was though a very simple idea. I had to expand a
Mhm.
lot for the future, really, for the Cellar.
And I'm going to throw it over to Luke after this. I'm going to ask this question. If you could, just for the listeners and the viewers, if you can give us like a short description of the Cellar, so people have an idea of what it is that they're going into.
It's basically about a family who moved to a new house in the country, and their daughter goes missing in the cellar of their house, and the mother, played by Elisha Cuthbert, is convinced that something more supernatural has happened to her, and something the house is responsible for her. And her husband doesn't believe this, and that's really, you know, as much as I can say without major spoilers.
Yeah. I mean, but it definitely had some super creepy scenes, like again, we won't give any spoilers away, but the scenes at the cellar, looking into that cellar, those were quite unsettling. I'm just going to tell you that right now. All right, Cheeseman.
Now there's like some dimensional kind of like talk and almost kind of like a portal type thing like within.
Don't give anything away. Don't give anything away.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. Just like, I
Yeah,
mean, look,
that's kind of like established in the kind of the beginning and even in the
yeah.
trailer, so I don't feel like I'm crossing the line with that. But are you a fan of that kind of like science and that kind of talk or that kind of spiritual world type thing? Like what kind of inspired that into the writing of the film?
You know, that is something that I had to develop, you know, because I went through many different mythologies. I went through Irish mythology. There was Druids and Balor, the one-eyed king of the Fomorians, was actually in there at one stage. And then I hit upon you know, that this should be mathematically based, and you know, and I started thinking about how H.P. Lovecraft has built his sort of sort of his his ancient evils come from nearly the universe, or a part of the universe. So I started to think about that. I've always been interested in string theory and dimensions, and I started to, you know, think about. And I actually saw someone from another festival recently write what they thought the influences were, and they mentioned a writer who used to write for the BBC called Nigel Neal, and like he used to write these sort of science fiction slash horror ideas, which were like pretty, you know, groundbreaking at the time. So in a way, now I'm not saying I was directly influenced by that. I would say H.P. Lovecraft was closer, and also I just didn't want to go down the route of the Judeo-Christian mythology, and yet I did. So in a way, what I did was I just replaced, like, my hell is called the void. You know, I sort of replaced everything with some sort of different version. Um, but you know, I mean, look. It's, you know, the film itself, I would say, is still conventional in a way. It's playing with tropes, with horror tropes a lot. You know,
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's quite well aware of its
It's
history.
scary. It's
Mhm.
scary.
Okay, cool.
But go ahead, Cheeseman. You got another question?
Yeah, sure. So, can you talk about like the casting process of the project?
Sure, yeah. So Owen Macken was in my first feature, Savage. He had a small part, and that was back in 2008 or 9. We shot it. He also, the producers produced he directed a feature last year. One of the producers had produced that. So, but we know Owen anyway for years. So actually, it was really nice just to work with Owen finally now in a lead role. Um, Owen's agent is also Elisha's agent, so it's
Nice.
very handy. You know, these things. Sometimes it's things, the easiest road, really, the road of less resistance. But you know, that wouldn't have worked if Elisha wasn't just such a nice person, and you know, easy to
Yeah.
work with actress, and an intelligent actress. You know,
Mm.
when I spoke to her, it was obviously during COVID, so there was no meetings face to face. It was through Zoom like this, and she, you know, she was already answering and saying things that I was thinking about the character before I said it. There was even didn't know how to say it, and I was building up to saying it. And before I knew it, she said it. She said, "Thinking of dyeing my hair for the character," and I went, "Oh yeah, okay, great," because that's what I was thinking. But I didn't want to come out and go, "Would you be interested in dyeing your hair?" But she just said it straight out, and I was going, "Oh, this is brilliant," and it worked out so well because they had to come over and quarantine for 2 weeks because of COVID.
Right.
And so then they got to sort of really relax into Ireland, and we were all staying in these cottages. Well, me and the cast beside the house that we filmed in. So, you know, we were able to hang out in the evenings in the lead up in the prep, and they were just so supportive, the two of them. You know, I've don't think I've ever felt as supported. And I'll give you a really quick example. We were on such a low budget that time is always the enemy, and at the very end of the very last day shooting in the house, the next day they were putting the house back to the way it used to be. So I knew that this was the last, and I was a half hour overtime, you know, and it couldn't really go much further. And that was it. And it was the end sequence of the film. And I was saying to people, I was saying to the cast, we're going to have to do these in one take only. And I mean, this is like unheard of. When we shot on film, you would never do one take because you wouldn't see the rushes till a week later. There could be hairs on the gate. So the safety was built in. Don't do one take. Don't ever. Even in the digital age, don't do one take. But anyway, we did. And other cast members and, you know, and I'd say other actors could freak out. They could freak out at you, angry that you put them in that position, or they could just freak out and keep messing up the takes. And none of this happened. They stayed calm. They were like, we got this, Brendan. And then nailed it in one take each time. So, you know, I really felt like they were the best supportive cast I've ever had. Yeah.
I tell you what, Elisha, she is such a get. Like, wow, she's a star. She is absolutely a star. And when I saw that she was in this film, it did add a level of. I like watching her. She's very good at what she does. So, I mean, did you feel like?
Sorry, go ahead. I'm just saying that she's a very funny person as well.
Yeah?
Yeah, she's hilarious. Yeah, really funny. Really quick-witted.
Now, for people who may not be super familiar with the film, like, would you describe this film perhaps, people trying to decide if would you describe this as prestige horror, you know, such as Hereditary or Get Out or something like that?
No, okay. I wouldn't, no.
How would you describe it?
Well, look, there's that spectrum of horror. Say Martyrs is on one end. Okay, like something really, and then you've got like sort of elevated horror and Hereditary and stuff in there. And then, you know, there's another end, which is a sort of, you call it a theme park, you know, it's a bit of fun. I definitely think we're in there, but I do think, you know, we're still, you know, we're having some fun with some of the tropes and some of the twists you won't have seen before. So, you know, they will, they might rustle up a scare, but I definitely think we're on the popcorn, you know, get the popcorn in, have a bit of fun.
Yeah. Luke.
Yeah. So like there's definitely like a presence of social media in this where like the teens kind of like on social media, and then the son plays like video games, has that, you know, childlike innocence. He's playing, which I think is awesome, Mario Brothers of all thing, like one of the best like retro games of, you know, like my youth and all that. Can you talk about kind of like the commentary of kind of like, you know, the innocence of youth with the video games versus like, you know, social media definitely, especially social media definitely is kind of almost like a character of like adding almost, there's some commentary there. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, you know, the social media would have come second to probably what's a more important commentary in there, which is, you know, when I was writing the script the first time, I went through lots of different versions of characters. And, you know, at one stage, the short film was a prologue. So like a daughter goes missing, but then a new family move into the house and it's a whole new family. And so a lot of these, I had characters that were innocent. They were unfortunate. And, you know, without giving stuff away, it's like, I sort of really punished the characters in this film. So I was finding it hard to do that. And when I decided to make the parents, especially the mother, a advertising exec who is quite happy to exploit vulnerabilities of young women, young girls, to sell crap to them, really, like, and when I say exploit, pretty, you know, would be willing to really exploit all sorts of vulnerabilities. I found it a lot easier to, even though, you know, the character Keira does come around, I still found it very easy to put them through the ringer. So, you know, once I had the advertising there, I had that. But then I went through a couple of different versions of what was the best crap they're selling. and it was sort of the social media. It was, you know, what it is in it. It's probably not very clear, but it's a platform that will for vloggers who will maybe have a and then they were going to run a competition. So um, they'll make the vloggers compete for likes and who's the best. And again, it's when I say vlogger, is vlogger influencer. And I suppose I'm not a great fan of social media myself personally. I do know it and I do dip into it. I'm a watcher because, you know, all our company has social media and all, but I don't personally have it. But the thing I really don't understand is influencers.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't, and you know, maybe it's my age, but I don't understand the value of it. So I
But
suppose that's where that crept in, really. Yeah.
well, it's not just like there's the sordid side of influencers, the ones who do things that are just so, you know, macabre and things to get attention. I think, you know, those are the ones that just like make our turn our, you know, I don't want to bring up people by name, you know, but you know, going into a forest where people had committed suicide and stuff like that. That's just a terrible.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that kind of
Uh,
turn I can see. Yeah.
and I did see someone licking toilet seats on an aeroplane during the COVID pandemic. Did you see this one? No.
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 Oh my god.
Like, really, it's just mind-boggling.
Can I ask you, you mentioned the house. So I was going to ask you, like, so this was a house you filmed in. It wasn't like a sound studio, right?
Some of it was. The cellar
Right.
was a cellar. Yeah. The house was, you know, again, it's not a romantic story. It's like part of our financing structure was an organization called the RAP Fund, which is it sort of incentivizes shooting outside of Dublin, which is the capital of Ireland. So
Mhm.
it tries to bring the shooting to the west of Ireland. There's about 6-7 counties within the RAP Fund, and a lot of them had been used already, and they were pointing us towards Roscommon, County Roscommon, and saying it's not getting enough love. Try and shoot there.
Mhm.
And there's about 10 maybe stately homes of these big homes there. And I was just looking for a house that had a long corridor with a door on the end. I knew I'd never find a cellar in the house. And I knew then we could do something with a long corridor and a door. And I wasn't finding that, funnily enough. And then I walked into this one. There was a big open hallway with an open staircase, and it had a corridor. It had a door into a dining room and another corridor. So we had to build
Mhm.
our own fake door with a cloakroom, which we then, when we struck that set, we put that at the top of our cellar set so that we
Mhm.
could match the two or bridge the two scenes. But yeah, the house, the minute I walked into it, and just from the outside, the whole lot, the minute and it's a famous house here in Ireland. It's
What is it?
Wow.
it's called Clonalice House in County Roscommon. It's got we had to spend a lot of money getting experts to take the antiques out of that house. There's St. Patrick's banner. There's a harp belonging to Caroline, a very famous bard. There's a
Mhm.
coronation stone outside where all the high kings of Ireland have been crowned. So, and I
Wow.
think it was owned by one of the last high kings of Ireland, the house.
I think that's fantastic. I love films where, like, if it's a haunted house type scene, I mean, type film where the house itself is so iconically it's another character in the film. And this one it was. And Luke, we are coming up to the very end. We have time for one more question. Why don't you go ahead and ask it?
Yeah, so like in the film, you use counting as like an element of just creating this tension and horror, which was really cool. Like, was what? How did you get that idea? And was there any like inspiration from like classic movies like A Nightmare on Elm Street? Because there's a 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. That kind of chanting of that throughout. Like, how did you come up with this level of like counting, counting up and
No,
all that?
that came from the short film because in the short film, which is again influenced by a comic that was written by two Judge Dredd um, writers but they had a comic. They had a comic strip called The 13th Floor. It was about a sort of an elevator in a tower block in the
Mhm.
future, like HAL, but there was no 13th floor in this building, and this elevator could bring people it didn't like to the. And I always was fascinated in the comic of the numbers. So the short film was based on, if you in the film, there's this counting sequence on the stairs. So the minute the mythology, I said it's going to have to be mathematically based. I mean, my starting point was I googled, I googled like numbers and supernatural or something, and up popped evil numbers. So that was the starting point, and counting. I just knew that, you know, if you're going to hear voices, like what better? Yeah, you know what? It was a natural progression, basically.
Yep.
And the more you build on something, the further you can find, the more you'll find ways of using it.
It definitely added suspense. I agree with Luke in that one. Brendan Muldowney, the director and writer of The Cellar, in theaters and on Shudder, April 15th. Thank you so much, Brendan, for joining us today here on The Scare Guy Show.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.